Tracey. As we've already said hello, but hello again, and hello to those listening in on the recording and those live with us. I'm Holly Kelly, and as Matt said, I'm a regional ed tech coordinator. I really enjoy my job. I'm able to provide professional development to teachers and districts, administrators, tech directors, and really able to help them with all things ed tech. So why am I here? In my journey of being a teacher and a librarian, I really had a lot of chances to get and be one-on-one with students. And in that process, a lot of one-on-one conversation. And I also received a master's in counseling. And from there, with that passion, working with students with educational technology in the library, and then also just caring and being a part of their lives, then came that passion for SEL and social emotional learning. So thank you, Matt, for joining me. And I will allow you to introduce Anne, if that's the next one up.
Fantastic. Also joining us, colleague Anne Kasa. Anne is one of our instructional technology coaches. Anne, can you tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming and watching later and live and on demand. It's so fun. My name is Anne, like Matt said, and I have been studying SEL for about 20 years almost. I've been practicing mindfulness in my own self for more years than that. But SEL, I started learning about it with where I was able to work at a tribe school and learning Gene Gibbs's philosophy. We learned it, we lived it, we breathed it for all the time in the classroom and grade levels, spanning all grade levels. And I greatly enjoyed digging deeper into it there. And then as I continued on, I just kept finding more and more places to learn and engage and grow through mindful practices. I became a SEL certified educator a couple years ago. And last year I went through Breathe for Change and became an SEL certified facilitator and yoga instructor, focusing on the younger grades. So anytime you need help with some yoga in the classroom and mindfulness, meditation, SEL, let's do it. It's so much fun. It's a great way to make the world a little more connected.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Anne. Also joining us today is Tracey Schlepphorst as our special guest panelist. Tracey, can you tell the group what makes you special and tell us a little bit about you?
Sure, absolutely. I started off my educational career as a special education teacher, specifically with kids with emotional issues. It's always something that I've kind of had a passion for, to help people tackle those big barriers that we have with our emotions. From there, I went on to get my master's in school counseling, and I worked as a school counselor for several years before staying at home with my kids. And then as I was getting to the point of trying to decide if I was going to go back in and do counseling or back into the classroom again, I got a great idea for a children's book series. So I wrote, as you can see, the main character here has an emotional belly. So I have 5 books now in the Emotion Belly book series, and I go into schools and I talk to kids about taking care of their happy. So that has been something that has made me really happy over the past several years. And then from there, I kind of springboarded into our regional office. I'm in ROE 1 here in Quincy, Illinois, and I work as an SEL consultant. And so I have been helping teachers and administrators incorporate, coming up with unique ways to get SEL into the classroom. So that is probably the main reason that I'm here now, is for the interest and the time that I spend doing just that.
Okay, well, thanks for everyone for being part of this panel. And I understand that this is going to be a little bit different webinar format for us. We've all had kind of a busy day today. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and this is also Teacher Appreciation Week and Day, I believe. So, Anne, would you like to start us off with a little activity?
Absolutely. Thank you. I know that we've all been very busy for years, let alone hours and minutes, and I appreciate everyone for coming in and taking the time to join us today, and taking this time to grow for yourself, for your students, for each other. I just welcome you to come in and kind of just take off what's been happening today. You can feel free to sit up a little straighter in your chair, put both feet flat on the floor, send the shoulder blades down the back, get those shoulders out of our ears, and just take a nice little connection with our breath. Just notice where we are. We're not judging the breath. We're not changing the breath, just connecting to it and coming into this present moment. I'm going to invite you to either grab a pen and paper or just take your fingertip on your hand or on the table. We're going to do an activity called a mindful line drawing activity. What this is, it gives us a minute to just be focused, to become present. And I'm going to ask at the end of this how you can see this fitting into your classroom, your everyday. So how do you think, when would this be appropriate? How will this help your students? And we're going to just lead into reflecting on that afterwards. There's not many rules. Pencil, pen, whatever drawing implement you'd like to use, some kind of journal.
Well, there is one rule, because sometimes people join us while they're driving home. So if you're driving home, please keep your hands on the wheel and your eyes open.
Absolutely. And do not use the car as your pen. So the other rules are, once your pen hits the paper, it needs to keep moving and the line cannot cross itself. So that's it. It's going to be 1 minute. So again, our line will stay fluid. It'll keep moving and it just cannot cross itself. So keep that pattern in mind so we don't get those crossed lines. And we're going to go for 1 minute. I will not talk. Let's just focus all of our attention on moving that pen and creating this line. You may begin. And that was our 1 minute. Go ahead. I always like to put a little circle at the end, draw some flower petals. That's how I end my little line. And if you're feeling brave, go ahead and just take a look. Oh no, my background's on. But you can see kind of when it's not taking over. Well, my line ended up taking on a nice little shape. Oh, yours are huge. They all look so different. And that's one of my favorite parts of doing this activity, is holding them up and seeing what everybody else did. And it's such a great conversation starter. I always try to reflect on everything that I do. And I ask you either in the chat or go ahead and say it out loud. How are you feeling right now compared to right before that?
It allowed me to pause and take a breath.
Absolutely. And when would you see this being beneficial in a school day? I agree. Anytime. After lunch.
I was going to say, I think at any transitional times during the day, as you're trying to, you've done one activity, like you said, maybe lunch or going outside, but you're coming back in, because it really does call you to focus on an activity. So, yeah.
100%. I always recommend before testing. If we have a big test coming up, this is a great thing to do, especially if you're hitting them back to back. If you have a lot going on in one day that's kind of heavy, that's a nice way to do it. Or even to prepare to transition to another subject, because in elementary, everybody, we have the class together. So sometimes those transition times, you don't really get a lot of time to just refocus ourselves. I think that's a fun way to do it too. Well, I appreciate you for taking, this is called just mindful minute activity. It's a mindful line drawing. After drills would be great. What if there's some kind of disruption in your room? Maybe someone got sick. Let's bring everybody back. It's a lot better than saying, okay, everybody come back. We can be the biggest distraction in our room. And so finding ways that our students know. And then once the students do this repeatedly, they will start to do it on their own. They might just do it in their head, but noticing how that minute of pause brings forth great ability to self-regulate. And speaking of self-regulation, that is one of our CASEL competencies that I know Tracey here is an amazing person inside and out, and very knowledgeable on a lot of CASEL competencies and our ISB standards. Tracey, can you tell us a little bit more?
get myself unmuted here. Yes, we're going to kind of start by diving into what SEL really is and how SEL is defined by CASEL as well as by ISB, some of the goals and objectives that they have set for us in schools. While we're talking about it, if you're comfortable, I would love to hear from you in the chat if SEL is something that you regularly utilize already in your classroom, if you have a unique way of utilizing it, and also what SEL means to you. I would love to see some of those things coming through the chat as I talk. As you can see here with the shared screen, we have the actual definition as established by CASEL. I don't need to read that to you word for word, I don't think, because you all can see that and you will all have access to that definition. But I think, you know, the most important thing when we think about SEL is we understand that it's social emotional learning. It's encouraging us as teachers to find ways to take care of the emotional body of students. It's finding ways for us to plug into what's going on with kids. And I know for some educators, this can feel like territory that maybe they don't want to go into. Maybe they're not comfortable with their own emotional body. So talking about emotions in the classroom feels like something that they want to steer away from. But we're finding through the years of, incorporating more and more SEL activities into the classroom that students are actually doing better academically because they're able to feel more seen and heard, and they have a greater sense of connection in the classroom. I was listening to a podcast this morning, and interestingly, on the podcast, the person that was leading it said that she recently was on an airplane and she sat next to a school counselor who had just retired. So that's what they were doing. She was going off with her family to celebrate 30 years of being a school counselor. So the podcaster, being the inquisitive person that she is, of course, asked the school counselor, in 30 years of being a school counselor, what is the greatest change that you have noted? And she said that when she came in as a school counselor, if she would ask the parents what they wanted most for their students, they would gravitate towards things about success. So they would just say, I want my children to be successful. I want them to experience success. And now that terminology has switched over. And if you ask parents what they want today, most for their kids, is they'll say that they want them to be happy. So what is the difference between success and happiness? And how is it that our language has changed over to be that's the number one thing that we want for our kids? And don't we also feel like if our kids are successful, that they'll be happy? And it's just like, and it created this very interesting conversation. But we as a society are just so much more in tune to emotions, and specifically having happiness at the forefront of that. But we can't just throw out there that we want everyone to be happy. We have to throw out there, how do you get to happiness? And what is happiness? And how do we take care of all these other emotions that go along with it? So to me, I loved that piece of SEL and how it's putting itself at the forefront for all educators and even for parents, and how we have to rethink what it is, what our goals are with our kids, and how, again, this emotional body piece comes into play. So I hope you understand that, and I'm sure that some of you are feeling that in your own classrooms, and you understand, again, the connection piece and the seen and heard. And it doesn't have to be anything big. I think sometimes people shy away from SEL a little bit because they think that, it's going to take up so much time in their classroom. But just like Anne just demonstrated for us, just a simple minute of a line drawing can get people emotionally where they need to be and ready to learn. Now, Anne, I know that you wanted to talk about a little bit of the CASEL wheel that goes along with the definition here. So I will let you pull that up and we can talk about that a little bit.
Thanks, Tracy. I agree so much. Like a lot of times, sometimes educators get bared down, like they think they have to do this warm and fuzzy, or they have to deal with all of these emotions. And really, when we're looking at SEL, we are looking at those 5 competencies. It's more than just, are you happy today? Or, let's write in this gratitude journal. Those are all strategies to get where we're going. But if we scroll down, and this is CASEL's website here, and you'll have the link to this in that document when we share it. This is an interactive CASEL wheel. And so when you come down, you get the full thing, full picture of it. See how Holly's scrolling over. Anything that highlights, that gets highlighted there, you can click on and get a ton more information. When we look at that wheel, the center of it is that social emotional learning piece, that white center. Outside of it, you have the orange pieces, and then you have green pieces. Those orange pieces are the interpersonal pieces. That means how I'm feeling inside, my self-awareness, my self-regulation. It's managing myself. And then when those green pieces, when we look at those social instances, those relationship skills, those are the intrapersonal. It's how are we working with others? And when we think about that, when they come together, it becomes responsible decision-making. And this is what future employers are looking for. This is what current employers are looking for. These are our 21st century skills right here. It's 20th century skills. It's how do we work together? How do we bring ourselves to be our best selves, to have the ability to move forward, even if we have some kind of disappointment or some kind of huge elation that we have, because it's not always working up from feeling down. It could be working down from feeling up as well. I mean, being overly excited can be just as tough to work through as being very angry. And so just learning how to be that self-awareness, that self-management, leading into those intrapersonal skills. The beautiful parts that come outside of that circle, those rings that Holly is doing a wonderful job of highlighting, it talks about how we start with social emotional learning, we work through the self, and then we go out and we put this into place in the classroom, which branches out to have a greater impact on the school, which branches out into our families and caregivers to be working together with us, into the communities, to be reaching out to our students, our families, everybody just working together to build the best version of our future society as possible. And this place right here is going to be a wonderful place. Like I said, if Holly were to click on any one of those things, it's going to bring up a lot more information, little video clips, and this is all backed up by 25 years of CASEL research. So feel free to peruse this at your convenience and see how this wheel can help you.
And I'm going to add as well to it with everyone, kind of discussing SEL. SEL also, sometimes I feel like I don't fit the peaceful, soft personality of an SEL passionate person. And that is because I don't have that softness about me. I'm full energy. I go in all these different ways. I feel as though the way I view myself. So SEL is not a fixed mindset. It's not something we achieve. It's something we continuously keep growing and working at. So even as adults, when we look at this and we begin looking at SEL for ourselves, it will begin translating into our kids as well, because sometimes in the middle of the day, you'll realize that you're overwhelmed, your students are overwhelmed. And if you can remember to take a deep breath, then you're encouraging your students to take a deep breath. So if you're wanting to go into this and look more, breathe, know that it's a rabbit hole, but you can simply start with just being aware of your physical body. It's as simple as that. Like Anne said with our introduction, just taking a breath. Where is your tongue in your mouth? Where are your shoulders? Where are your hands? Where are your feet? And that right there is part of it that will then translate to your students in class. And then you can continue to build on that as well. But yes, thank you. I view it as an integral part of a classroom and as the person, and as an adult, you will benefit, and so won't your students and your family as well.
what can I do to promote SEL mindsets in my classroom or in my school?
Great question, Matt. And I think that has a lot to do with what Holly was just saying. All the names went through my head. Where we are constantly modeling this for our students. And that's something that we keep in mind, is practicing that pause, that breath, that showing how to respond to a situation instead of react to it. If you notice, if there is a behavior that's occurring in the classroom, how the teacher responds to that is almost always how the students are going to respond. So we are that model moving forward, which does place, heavy as the crown, right? When you are the teacher in the classroom, you do model everything that you do is a model. So working through that and doing those think alouds, bringing those out, they're equally as important in building relationships and community as they are during a math lesson, a social studies lesson, when you're reading aloud to kids and you send those thoughts out, when you're problem solving. Same thing as when, okay, oh, I just felt an emotion. That emotion, I think it was surprise. And this is how my body is feeling. This is how I'm going to react to it. And when you're playing those messages out, those students can hear that and they can get a good idea as to what to do when they feel that as well. Our little ones, they don't have the vocabulary to explain how they're feeling or to know how they're feeling. I mean, some of them don't even know when they're about to throw up. How are they about to know? How are they very good at knowing when they're about to be upset? So showing how we feel that in our bodies and showing how to move forward with that and regulate that is important to discuss and talk about. And when we do practice these strategies, we practice with that neutral headspace. Because like I said earlier, if we're overly agitated, we need to know how to come down. If we're underwhelmed, we need to know how to build ourselves up. And we can do that by practicing in that neutral headspace, so that when it comes time to use the tools, we know how to do that. Gratitude journals are huge, letting us know what we're grateful for in that day. And I always suggest to just write down 3 things that you did that went well. So what are you grateful for that you did that went well that day? It's nice that, if other people did things that went well too, add that on, but 3 things that you did. And then what is your impact in doing that? Because it's easy for people to say, okay, yeah, you know what? I taught this lesson today to my 3rd graders. They rocked it. They came out able to do this. They were sorting these shapes and everything went well. But, anybody could have taught them that. It's nothing I did that was special. Let's break that and start saying, you know what? I looked at many resources. I pulled this together. And that's what made this come together so well. I knew my kids. I confer with them every day. I know what their goals are. And with me knowing that, made this a successful lesson. Building that self-efficacy. And when our students see us doing that, then they're going to do that and build that confidence inside of themselves. Huge to be able to say, this went well, and this is why it went well. Cami is a tool out there that has a gratitude journal built in to templates. So if you can just assign it straight through there. I know Seesaw does. Nearpod has a lot of great tools where you can come in and start with the gratitude journals, or even just a Google Doc or running slide deck. Any of those things can be helpful. And along with that, I like to bring in accountability buddies. So when you get a goal on something, you keep each other accountable. So maybe you could be sharing gratitude for each other, making sure, hey, did you do your gratitude journal today? Did you practice your facts today? Did you practice your fluency today? And you can do it together, checking in on each other. So I know I have an accountability buddy in life, and they check in on me and I check in on them. I love it. But we have specific goals that we check in on with each other. And so those are just some ways that can get started. And from there, the tech ideas, they can spiral. Like I know, Holly, you've got some amazing tech ideas that you've been bringing in with different tools that just meld right into these. Do you have any that would work well for gratitude journals or things of that nature?
Yeah, absolutely. I use either Docs or Bloggers because it's a part if the majority of schools are Google schools. So if using Google, Bloggers is a great way as well as Docs. And it is important to remember with students that starting with a blank page can be very overwhelming for students who don't have experience with journaling. So it's very important to be able to provide journal prompts for students. Uh, Possibly always, or for the majority of time, for those students who aren't in the mindset of wanting to journal, to guide them, and then maybe they can transition off into that journal as well. And they don't have to be shared, they don't have to be read, they're private, they're for them. I will also mention with journals, when you're writing them in class, um, to also allow your counselors or your social workers know that you're doing journaling entry, or if there's a prompt that is in reaction to something major, an event, a trauma at school that took place, to make sure that you're prepared to be able to communicate with those counselors as well, and communicate with the students and follow up on those conversations as well. So yeah, and directly to journaling, I would go with Docs and Blogger. And if, like you said, if you have experience with some of those other educational technology apps, you can also delve into some of those, because there's some great templates as well there.
Now, Holly, you mentioned something about, what happens if a student writes down something or shares something that needs to go to a counselor for a more trauma-informed aspect. Tracey, do you have a lot of experience helping teachers know, when do I move this off to the onto the counselor, go hit my MTSS system? It's been recorded here, because sometimes students do share more in writing because it doesn't have to be spoken out loud.
Absolutely. And I know at one point in time, there were even middle school and high school teachers, that shied away from open journaling because they were afraid of things that might be revealed, and they're not being capable of handling them. But hopefully that idea has kind of shifted a little bit now, that it's better to know than not to know. And so if you are giving writing prompts and you're seeing something that is signaling, some type of trauma, or something that you feel like is not in your wheelhouse, then absolutely that should be taken to a school counselor or to an administrator. And I think one way to help with that, especially again, you're probably going to get, well, actually, you can get things revealed at any age. I shouldn't say that. But when you are doing a free writing activity, it's okay to tell the kids that, I want you to write freely, and I will be reading this. So don't let them think that no one's reading it if you're going to read it. So this will be read. And if there's ever anything that bothers me about your reading, or that I think that maybe you need to talk to someone else about, we'll be discussing that as well. So I think, just being upfront and honest with the kids, especially the ones that are old enough to really kind of grasp that, is a fair thing to do. Absolutely. And also, if you did see something, you could call in a counselor to talk with the student. But as long as you've let the student know that you're reading it, then they're not going to be surprised, when you tell them, I need to know a little bit more about this, or this feels a little bit big, and we need to take care of it. Absolutely. One other thing that I was going to just say before we get too much farther along is that, as Matt posed that question, what if you're not comfortable with it? And we've already showed you that the CASEL website is a great place to go for information and ideas, but also, ISB.net lays out the goals and standards that you should be striving for in your classroom during the school year. So you can just go on there. I would assume most people have probably read through. If you scroll down and you click on the Illinois, like that right there, the standards, there we go. So you'll see that it's laid out as a goal, and then that explains further why the goal is important, and then what the standard is, and then it tells you each grade level. So for instance, if you're a middle school teacher and you're just not exactly sure where to start and you're not getting much guidance on this, you would look at your goal for develop self-awareness and self-management skills to achieve school and life success. And then you would go down and you would look at, what are those that you're supposed to be hitting at the middle school level, and then apply strategies to manage stress and motivate successful performance. And I think you first can start by asking yourself the question, what do you do to manage your own stress? How do you manage your own stress? And then that will show you and kind of set the foundation for ways that you can help your students to also manage their stress. So these are things that we're all doing. I always like to say, even if you think you're not doing SEL in the classroom, you are, because you have an emotional body, just like your students do. So you are showing them how to react to stressful situations. You are demonstrating your own happiness, your own sadness, your own anger, your own frustration. It's impossible to just put a mask on when you walk into the classroom and not show, a variety of emotions throughout the school year. And also, I also like to say, when you're allowing kids to show their emotions and talk about their emotions, also remember that it's not personal. If they're telling you things that are happening in the classroom that, they're talking about, that's fabulous. And if they're asking for something different, then that's good. And and it's not personal to you as a teacher. They're coming in with their own background, things of other experiences, and then hopefully you can kind of meet them where they are. And again, just dig into yourself for any reactions that you're having to things that are happening, and come up with your own strategies for dealing with yourself, so that you can keep yourself on track a little bit more.
Tracey, it
All right.
reminds me of one of those moments where, as a classroom teacher, or when I was in classrooms as a librarian, and students were very, very rambunctious, or they just got back from lunch, or they're just excited to see me. There's nothing wrong with that. Or we had a really funny joke and we had to bring them back. And it's like learning that balance of, in a roar of laughter, and then, okay, let's focus on content. So a lot of times just either saying, you need to take a deep breath. Okay, go ahead and take a deep breath, versus just being the person at the forefront of the classroom to just go like this. And to do that a few times until the kids join in with you, to also calm myself down, which I need a lot of, and then also to welcome your students to also calm down, is one of those moments. I do say, as well as a parent, I find that where it's like, all right, you need to just take a deep breath, versus just doing it. So when I'm angry, right? Matt, in addition to that as well, with some of the technology that we were sharing as well, with having your students and welcoming your students into the classroom, is having a playlist. YouTube, owned by Google, they have a ton of mindfulness playlist, or if you have a playlist that you have as well, to have your students come into the classroom, to prepare them, to get them started on their bell ringer, but to have that calm music, because we all know, if we all entered this room and there was some bumping music, we'd be excited, we'd be singing and dancing, and there's a great time for that. There's no reason. But then there's other times where we need to calm. So if you're that teacher that, has after lunch, that after lunch class, or you're like, oh, my afternoon classes are just so high energy, and you want them to be calmer, playing music for students, they love it. Not only do they love it, but it's accessible. You're using that technology to inadvertently just bring it down a little bit. And YouTube has a great endless supply of meditation and mindfulness videos for students.
And here's something else that's kind of fascinating, that rhythm is, if you have ever done anything with Dr. Bruce Perry for neuro sequential model of education, they talk about rhythm a lot and how important rhythm is. and hitting that 180 beats per minute kind of heart rate kind of thing. And there's actually playlists. I just learned this. There's playlists that are geared that will tell you what songs have, the 180, like play to that, and that they find that to be the most regulating. So I don't have that playlist put together yet, but I plan to do it because I think that is fascinating.
I love
That's
that you talk about that.
awesome.
That is pretty cool. That's it's a fun way to bring music in, which is it's a language to the soul, in my opinion. Music, it just talks to people in so many different ways. I love it. I have to do a little bit of a shameless plug here, but like Matt, at the end of the month, right, we have a webinar coming up with how to use some Google tools
Right.
to help with tech. What's that one called? I can't remember.
I think it's using Google Workspaces to support SEL or something along those lines in just a
Hey,
couple of weeks down the road.
please come join myself and Matt, and we'll be talking about using Google Forms and slides and sites to support bringing SEL into the classroom, especially that self-regulation piece and opening up direct channels of communication between the teacher and the students, and giving students that ability to self-regulate. Like Tracey was talking about, having that ability to to type, and knowing that this is going to be read by someone is so different than just typing into space. And so I like to give them both opportunities. There's this item out there, it's called a Buddha board. It's like this big, and you can use a paintbrush to write something on it. It's just a little paintbrush with water, and you write it on there. It can be whatever your concern is, whatever your fear is. And then as you sit back and breathe, it disappears from the Buddha board. It just kind of evaporates, and the letters disappear. And it's very relaxing. And we can do something similar with a slide or a Jamboard, where students, they can put it on there. And even if you want to create a presentation where things dissolve away, just all these types of things that we can put out there and do. Or that delete button is fantastic. They can write out this letters, whatever they want to say. I tell them, I'm like, when you're on a slide that's just for you, that's not going to be read, you write whatever you want to write, whatever spelling doesn't count, no punctuation, whatever needs to come out of you can come out of you there, and then delete, wipe it away. It's very refreshing. And I've even gone like no tech, or even, I guess this would be low tech, for the teacher's lounge only, not for a classroom, where you decorate a shredder and you just have scrap paper next to it, where you can write something down that's bothering you and ram it through the shredder. And then at the end of the year, have a confetti party, but like I said, decorate that shredder and just have a stack of paper there. It's very cathartic for some. And as we'll talk about, what's cathartic for some can be anxiety stricken for others. And that's why we try so many different things, so many different types of music, so many different activities. Like you can tell someone, oh, for self-care, go take a bath. I'm going to tell you one thing, I can't stand taking a bath. It's my own soup. I'm sitting in my own dirty water. Like, just get me out. But other people can lay there for hours and just love it. And I'm like, so we always have to remember that what works for us is not going to work for someone else. And that's okay. The opposite of what I believe to be true is completely true to someone else. And that's okay. And so one of the things that we wanted to share with you all are these virtual calm spaces. One is done with as a slide deck. And this was created by, I used to teach a mindfulness for educators class. And this is one of my teams of educators that participated. They got together and created this. So that second slide is directions on how to use this inside of a classroom. And it just talks about how to set it up, where to sit with kids, how to have kids put this together and learn from and with it. So once you get this rolling with your kids, I would take that slide out and keep it for your own reference. But then that third one, again, that gives direction to the kids, totally editable, make your own copy, do what you want to do with it. And then as you go through the slides, there's different types of calming activities. So we have sound and music. So each one of these is a link that you can hear sounds of the rainforest, tropical beaches, flutes, pianos, nature. And people can find out. I don't want to just say students, because it's teachers and students can use this to find out what calms them or what motivates them. Because remember, you may be coming from a place where you need to energize. And so you want to look for both. What's going to calm me? What's going to energize me? And so is music it? Is music going to calm me, or is music going to excite me? Do I need some visual relaxation here? Like there's that one underwater one. You can watch like a coral reef. I think it's like 11 hours of coral reef. You get to see like the turtles swim by and oh my gosh, I love it. I always tell the kids, I'm like, just full screen it. If you want to sit here and watch this for 5 minutes, have at it. Why not? If that's going to be what helps us get through our day, let's do it. And it also, oh yeah, 11, 11, 11. 11, 11 is my lucky number, by the way. But it also pairs in some sound therapy with that visualization relaxation as well. We have mindfulness here. That belly breathing is so cute. Who doesn't love watching Elmo belly breathe? He talks about how he feels like a monster when his anger is out of control, and how do you calm that down and get back to where you are? And he gets to belly breathe, and it's super cute. You can see it's like you're fogging up a glass. So big breaths, getting that air out of the breath, out of the chest is so important. And as we continue looking through, there's creativity where you can go in with like a little spirograph. That's my favorite one. You can practice drawing lines of symmetry. And as we move on, there's movement, big movement, like the cosmic yoga for kids, any way to get those big muscle groups moving. Always, if we can get those quads to engage, then a lot of the blood will get moving. That's our biggest muscle group. So even getting kids to get out of their chair and do a chair pose, like a yoga chair pose, and then coming up, standing up straight. Sun salutations are amazing yoga poses to do in the classroom, especially since we can't be moving around too much still. When we are able to get back together, I always recommend tree pose and having people put their arms around each other's shoulders to see how nice it is to be supported in that pose versus having to struggle on your own, and what's the benefit of each. And so the biggest thing I like to see come from this is to have the kids build on their own slides at the end. So let them find what works best for them and create some. Hello, Flipgrid. Can we record our best friend giving us a word of encouragement? Can we take it home and have our parents or whoever lives with us record some words of encouragement for us? Can we have someone read a favorite poem? What can we do to have recorded to have access to anytime we need it? I think that's so powerful to have kids move from being the consumer to the producer with technology like this. They can make their own pieces. We can make our own class piece. So many amazing things to do with this tool. So please take it, use it, change it, whatever you want to do with it. Are there any questions about the virtual calm space?
And again, there will be a document shared at the end of the webinar in a few minutes that will have clickable links to all of these things.
Awesome. Thank you.
Now, I also saw in that document that there are some other resources as well that you're going to share with us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Holly, if you can click on that SEL in a digital life, I think that one is pretty phenomenal from Common Sense Media. Let's just scroll down a little bit. Yeah, so this gives us all kinds of resources as to have SEL in that digital world. So if you click on that K5, please. Thank you. Go ahead and scroll down a little bit. It's a whole bunch of CASEL aligned activities. So feel free to peruse this, take a look around, see what you could find in here, but a lot more little lesson ideas and strategies that, again, are aligned to CASEL's research are here at your fingertips.
And Common Sense Media also does a good job as well as including communities and families. So there's also some activities that you can send home to families as well, many times in Common Sense Media. And being a very hyper person myself, I've learned a lot through SEL for myself and for my students. And I really learned the difference between that fixed and growth mindset. And I always love using the example as coding, because with technology, and if you're a science teacher or a math teacher and you're listening or you're here live, you may say, well, in my classroom, I don't offer a lot of opportunities for journaling. I don't offer a lot of writing. And that's okay. You can also include, you can always add some, but if you're not comfortable with that yet, having that growth mindset, give a student block-based coding for the first time and see how sometimes they react. It's sometimes difficult and they may say, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. I don't know how to do this. I can't. That fixed mindset versus showing them how you build on those blocks and block-based coding with that perseverance, and then having that growth mindset of, I may not be able to do this today, but I'm going to, I will learn it. And learning that difference and teaching and modeling that for the students is part of SEL as well on a very small level. So even having those positive interactions with students is a way of you using SEL. If, yes, exactly. And I couldn't think of the word yet, the power of yet. I may not be able to do it today, or I may not be able to do it yet. Rather, thank you, Anne. I had a brain block, absolutely. And just changing your mindset with yourself for your students is a way that you can include SEL in your classroom. If you're not yet comfortable doing the tree pose, that's okay. And Anne, are you, or Tracy, do you want to add anything? We haven't heard from you in a little bit. Did you want to add anything in before I show one of my favorite slides here?
I mean, honestly, once you get into this more techie kind of part of it, I think this is more your expertise. So it's good. I think you're doing a great job, and I just love all the possibilities and all the fun things to do. But I'm more an observer at this point.
That's great. No, and Tracy, we always appreciate it. And like Tracy said, the more techie stuff Tracy's learning on her endeavor, the power of yet. And every time I talk to her, she's doing something new, and just keep encouraging, even with her having that growth mindset of maybe she doesn't view, you don't view yourself as a tech expert, but who really is with the change of technology? It moves so fast. So all we can do is just keep practicing. So with that, and I think for being cognizant of time, we have a few minutes left, and I do just want to share this. It'll be shared, it says slides here, and I can maybe add a more descriptive term, but there's a set of slides. I believe there's 18. The great thing with SEL and the hard thing with SEL is there's so many resources, and that can become very overwhelming so quickly. So what I suggest is set a small goal. What can you do on Monday in your class with your students that can help the energy, the pulse, the productivity of learning to get your students on track? How can you model something that you learned today? And then you have your someday approach. What can you do that's really big that you want to do someday with your kids? When you begin thinking of that, this slide deck, there is a ton of resources that allow you to not have to do it alone. If you scroll through here, you'll see a bunch of different educational technology apps. If you've never used Nearpod, keep scrolling on. You can always come back and learn Nearpod, but just because you've never used any of these doesn't mean you have to learn them, use them today. What I welcome you to do is look through these and find what educational apps you already use in your classroom or with your students or your school subscribes to. Brain Pop, Pear Deck, Seesaw, all of these different technology educational applications have amazing SEL activities, templates that you can use, videos that you can use with students. In addition, Be Internet Awesome, that's the free Interland that teaches that responsible decision making. Canva has amazing SEL templates that you can use for your bathrooms and your classrooms. You can find posters. YouTube. We spoke about digital journals and even vision boards, creating a vision board through Google Drawings. And then there's even more. There are so many. It's overwhelming. So once again, look through this list, maybe just choose one to learn and choose one that you know of. So with that being said, I welcome you, as Anne said, with a few minutes left, to inhale on the ball up using Giphy and exhale on the ball down. Are you ready? Okay. And that's just using the Giphy extension. You can throw that extension anywhere into your classroom and it will remind you, as the way it just reminded me, to take a breath. And now that means in the course of 1 hour, I've taken at least 3 solid deep breaths. So lastly, with this, ways to sprinkle SEL into your classroom. I have some activities here that you can see. You can click on different activities of how I've been able to incorporate SEL into classrooms or into my classroom. Moat is one of my favorite. When I was an English teacher, we taught tone in writing. So the best way to teach tone was to learn tone when we speak to each other. So we had students record just 2 words. It was "I'm fine." And then we had them partner up with someone else, and the student would have to match the tone with an image to take responsibility over when we say 2 words, how different we can say it. So when we're engaging with people, that self-awareness piece, which is also part of SEL, I was able to embed that into that curriculum by just using tone. There's also, based on elementary, these are all clickable links that you can find. Even just adding a classroom banner in Google Classroom that has some affirming words or a quote that you can add or change. Here's Tracey's book here. And there's some different activities using Jamboard. I know Anne is very, very passionate about using Google Forms as a check-in. There's even some activities for SEL in middle school and some high school activities as well. So feel free in your own time. I welcome you to look at some of those and see what you can learn and what you already use in your class and what kind of SEL tools that are there that you can embed in what you're already doing. To Tracey, to Anne, to Matt.
That was awesome, Holly. You shared a lot of great things. I love that slide deck. You shared that with me before, and I like to check it out every once in a while. I'm learning so many new things from it as well.
Well, Anne, your slide deck has those like beautiful muted colors that I absolutely love. And then mine are just like over the top, obnoxious and colorful, right? But I love that about Anne and I. We're so different, but we're so passionate both about SEL because we both use it in our own lives. And we've seen the positivity and the impact it makes with staff, administrators, and students. So I love it, Anne.
And I think, anybody can get their hands on either one of your slide decks, doesn't have an excuse for not putting some of this SEL to work in their classroom or in their own lives, because you've just really laid it out in such a simple manner and given them some amazing, amazing tools to look at.
Thank you, Tracey. And I love how you say, but simple isn't always easy. So we're here, even
though
they're here. You have our contact information on this form or on this paper that we use that term loosely, that Matt's going to share out with you. Please reach out to us. I mean, we don't go away. We are for you here. I know that at least that's me. I'm sure everybody else feels the same way. There's a whole bunch of resources down there at the bottom for you to look through and go over and check out. Most of them, I think all of them are mostly free that we put on there. And let us know how we can help, because that's something we all 3 of us, four of us love to do. So please reach out, let us know.
And Anne, Tracey, Matt, thank you guys. I will, if you guys are okay, follow up with an activity I did today with the staff, and they didn't really realize what I was doing. But today I put a question into our chat for staff on Teachers Day is please comment on a teacher that was most memorable. and why were they most memorable. And I received probably today the most that anyone's written since I've been on the LTC. We chat every day, but there were people and they wrote sentences, and I haven't yet seen that, and I took notice of it. And it's important to mention that every single person didn't speak to a lesson or the curriculum, they spoke to the person. They spoke to the teacher because they cared, because they were there, because they were supportive, because they were affirming, and because they were kind. And to anyone listening on record, the fact that you're here or you're present, you're trying to be the best version of yourself, and there's something to congratulate and welcome in that. And I am proud of you for that. And I hope that you guys have a great rest of the school year, and your shoulders stay relaxed, your tongue stays off the roof of your mouth, and your feet stay sturdy on the ground. And if they're not, know that in the course of a minute, you can always change your physical body and your mindset. So thank you guys for being here. And